Hey, what's going on, everyone? And welcome to another episode of the Lifestyle Architects. Today I have Hal Elrod on the show, and he has a very inspiring story. Hal is a number one best-selling author, international keynote speaker, Hall of Fame business achiever, and one of America's top success coaches. But you've done so much for a very young age, I must say, more than most people do in a lifetime. So I would like to welcome you to my show.
Thank you. It's an honor. This is I've been looking forward to this all week. Yeah, thank you for having me.
That's awesome. How I connected with you, I was looking around for some people. I think I found your podcast,
Yeah.
and that's been kind of in the top of the new noteworthy section. I launched my podcast, then I checked it out. I read your books, and I just knew I had to have you on my show. And we are here to talk more about kind of your story and the miracle morning and all this stuff you have going on. So
Yeah,
I'm super
absolutely. I'm
excited.
I'm all yours. Anything. My life's an open book, so I'm happy to
Definitely.
share anything about me and any strategies, anything tactical that I can share with your viewers and your listeners that'll help take your life to the next level, whatever that is for you.
Definitely. First of all, let's start with your story a little bit and how it's super inspiring. So why don't you tell my audience about this and how you got to this point where you are today?
Yeah, so I think that a good place to start is when I was 19 years old, I gave up my dream job, which was a radio disc jockey. I had been on the radio since I was 15, known as Yo Pal Hal, right? Thanks, Mom, for the cool nickname. But gave up that dream when I got offered a sales position for Cutco Cutlery. I was selling kitchen knives. Never, ever imagined I'd be selling knives. Never was that on my dreams list, or did I think I'd be a salesperson. And 10 days into my sales career, I had broken this all-time company record, which meant I had sold more Cutco than almost anyone else in the 50-year history of the company. And that's kind of a defining moment where I realized, wow, this C&D student that I was, whose only record I held was literally the record for the most hours of detention that any student ever got in a year at my high school.
Oh,
That was true, my only record. Really mediocre my whole life. And in that defining moment when I decided to commit to one thing and give it everything I had, that was the moment that my destiny kind of was shaped, right? And I achieved something I never thought possible. A year and a half later, I was one of the company's top salespeople consistently, and they always had me speak at events, right? It was, go give a message on closing or on getting referrals or whatever it was. And one night I gave a speech, and it was one of the best speeches I'd ever given in that I got my first standing ovation. So it was really, for me, I was like so excited and really elated. I got the standing ovation. And driving home that night, just if you can imagine, on top of the world, I was just, music blasting, just excited, driving my brand new Ford Mustang, which at that age, that was my dream car. I just bought it 3 weeks prior. And what I'm going to tell you from this point forward, I actually don't remember. I only know the next few weeks from hospital reports and police reports and eyewitnesses. But at approximately 11:34 p.m., I was hit head-on by a drunk driver at 70 miles an hour. Both of us traveling 70 miles an hour. Sent my car spinning into oncoming traffic, and the car behind me crashed into my door at 70 miles an hour. And if you can imagine a car hitting your door at 70 miles an hour, the impact smashed my car almost in half, and the left side of my door crushed into my body. It broke my arm in half, broke my leg literally in half. My leg was broken in half. My pelvis was broken in 3 places. I severed the nerve in my arm. My ear was almost completely severed, hanging on by about a half of an inch. And all the bones in my eye were destroyed so bad that it's now rebuilt. It's all metal. I have a metal eye socket, metal rods in my arm, screws in my elbow, a 14-inch titanium rod in my leg. And the top of my head, the ceiling buckled, and it kind of sliced a V into the top of my skull. And sorry to be graphic, but that's the story as it happened.
hmm.
And I literally died at the scene of the accident. It took them almost an hour to cut me out of the car, and I bled to death. And I was dead for 6 minutes. I rushed to the hospital for surgery. I was in a coma for 6 days, came out of the coma and was told by doctors that I had permanent brain damage and I would never walk again. So that was the first rock bottom I ever faced, where I couldn't imagine, life could be any worse than that.
Wow. That's just in I mean, that must have felt like you were quite successful like at a time, and like before that you were actually focusing on one thing and it was working for you, and then this horrible thing happened, and like how was this after that? Like how, I mean, you eventually they woke you up and you're alive, thank God, you know. And
Yeah.
how do you turn this horrible moment and the adversity you faced into something better, something bigger, into your biggest advantage in life?
Yeah, it's it's something that it's almost like if you could imagine waking up from the coma, waking up and it's like you wake up and into a nightmare, right? Where like no matter how much you rub your eyes and shake your head and like try to snap out of it, you're like, this is my real life, right?
Hmm.
I've got broken bones. The doctors are saying I'll never walk again.
Exactly.
I have no short-term literally, like Navid, you could spend an hour with me in the hospital. So it's a difficult reality to face. And what happened quicker than most is I accepted it. And I actually accepted it to the point where the doctors thought I was in denial because I was so upbeat. In fact, they called my parents in one day and they sat my mom and dad down and they said, Mr. and Mrs. Elrod, we're very concerned with Hal. Every time we see Hal, he's always smiling and laughing and joking with us and making us laugh. And they said, that's not normal, right? Not for a 20-year-old that doesn't know if he's ever going to walk again. They said, so we've seen this before. We believe that Hal's reality is so difficult for him to accept that he's living in a state of delusion. He's just pretending everything's okay because it's easier to live in this fantasy world than for him to accept what's happened to him. They said, but he has to face this at some point, and so it's better if he does it in the hospital while we're able to keep him in a controlled environment, where he can't, turn into drugs or alcohol or something like that. So we'd like you to talk to him and find out how he's really feeling. So my dad comes in to my hospital room, and keep in mind, I'm laying in my hospital bed, my ear is sewn on. This is only like 2 weeks after the accident, a week out of the coma. And my dad sits me down and he says, Hal, do you mind if I talk to you for a few minutes about, something serious? And I didn't know the conversation that he had with the doctors, so I'm like, sure. I'm kind of concerned. What's going on, Dad? I thought he had really bad news for me or something about my physical condition. And he said, Hal, I know that you have a lot of friends visiting and you're watching television and we're laughing and we're joking. And but he said, when no one's around to distract you, how are you feeling? How are you processing this whole thing? Are you sad? Are you angry? Lord knows your mom and I want to kill that drunk driver, if we got a hold of him, for doing this to our baby, our firstborn. Are you depressed? It's okay. The doctors say it's normal to feel these things, but it's important that you talk about them. And I really could tell my dad was like really emotional, like he was trying not to cry as he was talking to me. He was, tearing up, and I said, Dad, I thought you knew me better than that. And he was kind of taken aback for a second. I said, Dad, I live my life by the 5-minute rule. I learned this in my Cutco sales training, the 5-minute rule, which says it's okay to be negative sometimes, but not for more than 5 minutes. When something goes wrong, bitch, moan, complain, kick a chair, punch a wall, whatever you got to do to vent, and then you accept your circumstances as they are. You don't wish they were different and create that negative emotional pain. I wish it were different. This is not fair. I don't deserve this, right? Which most people do. I said, Dad, it's been more than 5 minutes. It's been 2 weeks. I can't change it, so there's no point in feeling bad about it. And my dad was a little bit in disbelief. He wasn't sure if this was really how I was feeling. And I said, Dad, listen, there's only one of two outcomes. Either the doctors are right and I never walk again, and I've already decided, again, if I can't change it, I'll accept it, and I'll be the happiest person you've ever seen in a wheelchair. The second option, and this is the one I'm betting on, is that I will walk again. And I'm going to visualize it every day. I'm going to imagine it every day. I'm going to work in therapy every day to take my first step. And you can go back and tell the doctors that I'm not in denial or delusion or whatever they think. In fact, it was the opposite, Navid, of what they thought. They thought that I was pretending to be happy because I couldn't accept my reality. It was the opposite. I had completely accepted my reality, so I was at peace with it, right? I can't change it, so I was at peace with it. And that's the greatest lesson, I think, that I learned, that I apply every day, that people can learn. Every negative emotion that we ever feel is self-created by something we can't change that we wish we could. And to put energy into wishing we could change something that's out of our control, whether it's because it's in the past, whether it's because it's how someone else, what they're in charge of it, like how someone treats us, right? We can't control that. We can't change how they treat us. Whether it's the global warming that we may not be able to immediately snap our fingers and change, putting energy into things like that are out of our control, whether it's the death or loss of a loved one or a relationship or a job, the only way that we can be truly happy and successful, it starts with accepting life and our circumstances and our challenges as they are, being at peace with them, and then we have space, we have emotional space to be motivated and grateful and happy and excited, but not when we're putting energy into those things that we can't change and resisting them, wishing that they were different.
I mean, this is very powerful. And I mean, I'm obviously not experienced the same horrible thing that you went through, but something similar in that sense is that last year I turned something horrible into personal growth and kind of launched my business. It was when my brother passed away. It's been a little over a year, but it's like, you think that for that moment, you think that's the worst thing that could ever happen, that someone close dies or is not here anymore, because it's so normal that it's always around every day and you see him. And I mean, that's how I decided obviously you're sad for a while, but then I decided to just take, I see your book, so take life head on and just do it, and just go out there and launch my business, because I've been procrastinating for a while, even though I had the answers myself, but I didn't do anything about it. I read personal development, but I didn't take as much action as I wanted.
Yeah.
So how did this affect you? Like, did you start your business after that, or like decided to live a more fulfilling life, if I can say so?
Yeah. So the three biggest lessons that I learned from this, I call these, and when I give a keynote message, I teach what I call the ABCs of taking life head on. So the A is for accept all things you can't change. That's what we just talked about, right? And that's the first step. And by the way, give you a quick example. If anybody listening to this doesn't like traffic, most people, when I give a speech, I go, how many of you by a show of hands don't like traffic? And everybody's hand goes up, right? And I go, well, that's because you're wishing it were different. You're not willing to accept traffic as it is. Right? When I hit traffic, I just go, well, I can't change it. Why would I be upset or frustrated over the pace of the cars in front of me, right? Mm-hmm. So whether it's the loss of a loved one, as you experience by accepting it and being at peace with it, or it's everyday challenges like hitting traffic or something like that, right? It's by living a life where we accept all things we can't change, that we're at peace with our life. The second lesson is the B is be grateful for everything, right? Mm-hmm. So I think in life we have kind of two pages that we can focus on. One that lists everything we have to be grateful for. And when we focus on that page, we feel good, right? We're happy and we're able to focus on what we want, not what we're afraid of or not what we don't want. But we also have another page that lists everything that we have to feel bad about. All of our fears and our faults and our insecurities. And Navid, do you know anyone that complains a lot, by the way?
Yeah, definitely.
So if you know anyone that complains a lot, they often, and by the way, if you're thinking you don't know anyone that complains a lot, it might be that you're the one that complains a lot. Not you, Navid, but anyone listening, right? So be careful of that. But when people complain a lot, you often hear them defend their complaining by saying something or thinking something like, I'm not negative, though. I'm just realistic, right? I'm not negative. I'm just realistic. And my challenge to that way of thinking is, if you go back to those two pages that we have to focus on, how is it any more realistic to focus on, think about, and dwell on the negative things in our lives than it is to focus on, think about, and dwell on the positive things in our lives that we're grateful for, right? Mm-hmm. Both are equally realistic, but which you spend most of your time focusing on dramatically impacts the quality of your life. And right now, you have both. I have both. Navid, you have both. We all have both to focus on. Mm-hmm. And our quality of life at any given moment has very little to do with what's going on around us and only to do with what's going on inside of us. And it's really about, what are you focusing on? The things that make you feel bad, that make you feel defeated, discouraged, or the things that make you feel good and empowered? Are you focusing on your challenges, or are you focusing on your opportunities? Are you focusing on your problems, or are you focusing on your solutions? And it might sound simple, it might sound elementary, but I guarantee that if you're more self-aware, you realize, wow, I'm often focusing on my fears, right? I'm focusing on what I'm afraid of. I'm focusing on what could go wrong. I'm focusing on the problems. I'm focusing on my past, et cetera, et cetera. And then to really directly answer your question about, when did I start my business? How did I start my business? And how did I use this whole experience? The C, the A, B, and then the C is create consistent progress every day. Create daily progress toward becoming the person that you need to be to create the results that you want for your life, the business that you want. Create the daily progress toward becoming the person that you need to be. So for me, I got out of the hospital, and against doctor's orders, I begged my parents to drive me to sales appointments, because there was a sales contest when I got out of the hospital that I had a goal for before the accident started. I was out of the hospital 7 weeks after the accident. And, prior to those 7 weeks, I knew the sales contest was starting a couple months later. And in my mind, I wanted to be number one at the sales contest. Well, I got out of the hospital. The doctors said, and I asked the doctors, can I please work? Can I go back to work? Now, keep in mind, I could barely walk. I did take my first step again, though, for anyone. I didn't cover that part of the story. But 3 weeks after I was told I would never walk again, I took my first step. And then 4 weeks after that, I went home. Now, I could barely walk, though, right? It wasn't, I had one of those canes with like 4 prongs on it. I also was in a wheelchair a lot of the time. I couldn't drive because of my brain damage. My left hand didn't work because of my nerve damage. I only had use of one of my hands. So I was pretty bad and pretty beat up. And I begged my parents to drive me to my appointments, some sales appointments, so that I could compete in the sales contest. And after a lot of no, I was pleasantly persistent. I finally got my parents to agree they would drive me to my appointments. And so I went back to work, and I actually sold $7,000 worth of my Cutco knives in the 4 days that I had left of this contest. And I didn't win number one at the conference, as I was hoping for number one. But I was able to get number 4, the fourth place out of 500 sales reps. And I don't say that to brag like I'm cool or anything, but it really was, for me, an experience that was like, wow, that was the hardest thing I ever did, right? That was the hardest thing I ever did. I didn't really believe I could do it. And I think for all of us, anything that in your life, any goal that you have in your life right now, if you want to start a business, if you want to write a book, whatever it is that you want to do, right? The power is in simply moving in the right direction. I saw Jack Canfield speak once, and I loved what he talked about, his strategy of lean in to your goals. Just lean in. You don't have to know how you're going to get there. You don't have to have it all figured out. You don't have to believe. You don't have to believe that you can do it yet. Just lean in. When I wrote my first book and even my second book, writing isn't easy for me. So how did I lean in? I put in my schedule an hour to look at a Microsoft Word document with a book that said my first book. That's literally how I started. It said my first book. I didn't know what I was going to write. Didn't know how. But every day I scheduled, look at the document and just think about what you could write. And eventually I got some ideas and I wrote some words. And that led into one page, which led into another, which led into another. So lean into your goals. And for me, I think that the sales experience I had is what led me into starting my business 5 years later. That's when I wrote my first book. I decided I wanted to inspire people and empower people. I became a keynote speaker, motivational speaker. And then I launched my coaching business. I had hired a coach. He had really radically helped me transform my life. And I saw I want to pay it forward. And then I became a coach and started doing coaching for entrepreneurs and salespeople and business people and you name it. Anybody that wanted to take their life to the next level.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's very inspiring, and you shared your full story kind of in the first book you wrote, that
Sure.
take life head on, right? That was the first one, and I mean
Yes.
that must have been hard for you to just write it after the experience. It took a few years before you finally sat down and wrote the entire book, but you had the idea before, and then after that you came with the second book, which came, I believe it came out recently, right? It was not too long ago. Miracle Morning.
About a year and a half ago. Yeah,
Yeah, a year and a half ago. Yeah.
Taking Life Head On came out in 2006. The Miracle Morning came out in 2012. So at this rate, I'm trying to write my next book a lot faster than the first two. Otherwise,
I guess you're getting better as well.
Yeah.
For the first books takes longer time, then it's you're moving along faster. But I'm really interested in you told a little bit of your story here, so people can probably check out Take Life Head On if they want to. But I'm really interested in your second one, Miracle Morning, and kind of how you came up with this whole concept.
Yeah. Taking Life Head On. I always tell people, I never intended to be a writer. Like in high school, I could barely get an essay done, right? So like being an author was never on my dreams list. But I wrote the first book out of a sense of responsibility. It was, I overcame these circumstances in a way that really can inspire and empower other people, and really give them really specific strategies for overcoming adversity faster than they ever think is maybe possible. And so I wrote Taking Life Head On because enough people told me, Hal, you need to share your story and write a book. And I thought, okay, you're right. I need to do that. I can't let that experience be forsaken or whatever, or, I've got to use it for good, right?
Yep.
And then the second book, I guess that's why it took so long to write the second book, because same thing, I wasn't a writer. I didn't know if I'd ever write a book again, but it happened again. I went through a difficult adversity. I call it my second rock bottom. The accident was my first rock bottom. And 9 years after the accident, I had my second rock bottom. And surprisingly, Navid, it was worse than the first. And, I do interviews, like TV interviews sometimes, and they always ask me, they go, wait, it just seems like every time they always stop me and go, wait, how could it be worse than dying? I don't get, what's a rock bottom lower than death, But to be honest with you, it was, the economy crashed in 2008 and my business failed. And I lost my income. I lost over half my income. I couldn't pay my bills. I had to live on credit cards. I racked up over $50,000 in credit card debt. I couldn't pay my mortgage, so I lost my house. I just bought my first house. And my relationship started to suffer because for the first time in my life, I got deeply depressed. And I also stopped exercising because I was in scarcity mode, right? I woke up in the morning and I went into my office and I worked until I physically couldn't work anymore, until I was exhausted, which was usually from 6 or 7 a.m. until 9, 10 at night, sometimes midnight. And then I would either watch an hour of TV and veg out or go to bed. It was, and that was it. That was my routine. It was rinse and repeat. And 6 months of this depression, and 6 months of it getting worse and worse and worse. And finally, my girlfriend at the time, who is now my wife, so she did stick with me through the toughest time. She said, honey, I love you, but I don't know, and I hate seeing you like this. I don't know what I can do to help you. Why don't you reach out to one of your friends? You've got some friends that are really smart business people. They can probably help you turn this around. See, Navid, here's the thing. I was a success coach. So if you understand why I didn't tell anyone, right? I couldn't reach out to you and go, hey, I'm failing miserably, so do you know anyone that needs a success coach, right?
Yeah.
It didn't work. I thought I was like, I don't know if embarrassed is the right word, but I'm just like, I'm supposed to help people succeed, and I'm failing, and I'm a mess. I don't know how to fix it. So I finally call my best friend, John, who and as I called him, I'm like, why didn't I do this 6 months ago? Why did I take so long? And by the way, if you're listening to this and you are going through a struggle, right? You're going through a tough time. Don't wait to reach out and get help. I don't care if you're embarrassed or what. Everybody goes through struggles, and you got to reach out and get other perspectives to help. And so I called John. I told him what happened to me. I confessed, and I was expecting him to give me some radical, profound business knowledge. Right? I'm ready to take notes. Got my computer open. Got my hands, on the keyboard, ready to go. I get, John, what do I do? And he says, Hal, are you exercising every day? And I'm just quiet for a second, and I'm like, what the hell does that have to do with anything? I was like, what, John, are you even listening to me? And I'm starting to picture him. I'm like, dude, did I just spill my heart out to this guy? And he's like texting on his phone and not paying attention, my friend John. And he goes, no, Hal, I'm serious. You're a smart guy, but if you're not getting out of your comfort zone, if you're not getting outside and exercising every day and getting the blood and oxygen to your brain and the serotonin, the endorphins released that exercise produces, you're not going to think clear. You're not going to be able to solve your problems, and you're not going to think any better. You've got to get in a peak mental, physical, and emotional state, and that's how you'll turn your life around and your business around. He said you need to go for a run every day and listen to a self-help audio, listen to some Tony Robbins or some Jim Rohn or something. And I'm sitting there and I go, John, I don't think that's going to solve my problems. And besides, I hate running. Give me something else I could do. And he said, Hal, what do you hate worse, running or your current life situation? And I was like, son of a, all right, man. Okay, I'll go for a run. And here's the thing. I had no idea. In fact, I thought this was the stupidest idea ever. But I was desperate, and I thought, all right, John's smart. I'll just listen to him, do whatever he says. But I go up the next morning, I go for a run, and I grab my iPod. I'm listening to a Jim Rohn audio like John told me to. And I start running, and I'm just negative, right? My internal self-talk is like, this is so stupid. How is running going to solve my problems? I need to make money, not exercise. And 2 minutes into the run, I get the quote from Jim Rohn that changes my entire life. And it's the basis of the Miracle Morning. It's the basis of my life philosophy. And the quote from Jim Rohn, I had heard it before. That's the funny part, right? You hear something, Navid, you've heard this before, but you hear it at the right time. It might be the 10th time you've heard it or the 100th time, but it clicks because you're in the right state of mind. Maybe you're desperate, maybe you're inspired, maybe you're just, whatever it is, it hits. And here's the quote. Jim Rohn said, your level of success will rarely exceed your level of personal development because success is something you attract by the person that you become. And it hit me. I stopped running and I rewound the audio and I listened again. And I realized I'm not dedicating time every day to my personal development so that I can become the person that I need to be to create the success I want. My level of personal development was at like a 2, and I wanted level 10 success. And if you're watching this right now, the video, you see the disconnect, right? We want level 10 success, but if we're at a level 2, in terms of our personal development, which I define personal development as our knowledge, our confidence, our beliefs in ourself and what's possible for us, our skills, right? All of that, personal development's a very holistic, comprehensive term that really is all about who we are, who we've become. And my level of personal development was like at a 2, maybe a 3 on a good day, and I wanted level 10 success, and there was the disconnect. And so what happened is I ran home. I decided I've got to dedicate an hour a day to personal development. And what ended up happening was through about an hour of research on Google, I figured out the 6 most powerful personal development practices, that, if you will. And I committed, I'm going to do these every day for 30 days. Now, none of them were new to me. That was the funny part, right? It's like, I know all of these, but I've never really stuck with any of them. I thought I'm going to do all of them. But then the challenge was, when am I going to fit in an extra hour? And I decided, you know what? I'm not a morning person, but I've read enough to know that highly successful individuals typically wake up an hour before they have to be awake, and they work on themselves, right? They meditate, they visualize, they exercise, they journal, they do all these things that the rest of us have heard about doing, but we're hitting the snooze button, right? Most of us are hitting the snooze button, wasting the morning. And if you think about the energy, Navid, think about this for a second. The energy, the message that we're sending to the universe, not to mention to our subconscious mind. When the alarm clock goes off in the morning, that's life's first gift to us, right? It's the first opportunity life's giving us, saying, all right, this is your day. You can either do something extraordinary and become something extraordinary, or you can lie in bed for 9 more minutes unconscious, right? And most people, no, I know I say I wanted an extraordinary, successful life, but not as much as I'd rather lay here for 9 more minutes, right? And then the alarm clock goes off, and we do it again, and we do it again. And so the next morning, I woke up, and I felt like a kid on Christmas morning because I had such a sense of purpose that I was committed to do something different than I'd ever done before to change my life. I did what is now known as the Miracle Morning, but there was no name for it back then. And by 6 a.m., I went from being deeply depressed to really feeling energized and inspired and optimistic and motivated. And I had more clarity than I had in the last 6 months. And 2 months of doing this morning routine that had no name, and I had more than doubled my income. I went from being depressed to being as happy and motivated as I had ever been before in my life. My relationship with my significant other went from being on its last leg to thriving, and I more than doubled my income. I think I mentioned that. And I went from being in the worst shape of my life physically to beginning to train for a 52-mile ultra marathon that I completed 6 months later. And that was within 2 months. And that's why I started calling it the Miracle Morning, because it changed my life so fast that it felt like a miracle. I couldn't even believe it. And now, fast forward 4 years later, it's not even about the book. There are tens of thousands of people around the world that now wake up an hour earlier than they used to, and they swear by the Miracle Morning. To me, it's not even, it's so much bigger than me anymore. I just feel like I lit the fire, and kind of, not that I walked away, but I almost, like, I could walk away. Like, I could die tomorrow, and within, a few years, millions of people will be doing the Miracle Morning around the world, and it'll be changing their lives. And it has nothing to do with me anymore. It's about people paying it forward and then paying it forward, and it's really just spreading, via word of mouth.
Very powerful. And I can say for myself, the moments in my life when I was performing at a very high level, I was actually always kind of a morning person in my early days. I was playing a lot of sports, and I went into school. I always woke up early. But then, kind of after maybe last year when this happened to my brother, I was launching my business, but I didn't have a routine. I didn't go to the gym. I didn't do all the sports I was used to, and that kind of affected long term. And now this year I'm getting back to it, and that's why I read your book, and I'm also implementing this in my life now, and kind of going to the gym earlier, in the morning, like 6 o'clock or something, and just getting that stuff done, which makes me feel good, eating some great breakfast and all this. So let's get into some strategies, how other people can take this kind of concept of the Miracle Morning, whatever you want to call it, and like implement it in their own life to get massive results.
Yeah, let me. First and foremost, I think it's really important that. By the way, here's the book in case you haven't seen it and you're watching the video. 1 o'clock. But I think what's really important is, how do you wake up in the morning if you're not a morning person, right?
Exactly.
That chapter, I have a chapter in the book that gives these 5 simple steps to do that, and that's the first step. Because if I taught you like this extraordinary morning routine that is the Miracle Morning, but you struggle to get out of bed in the morning and you hit the snooze button, you're what I call a snooze-aholic, right? I'm a recovering snooze-aholic. Then the Miracle Morning doesn't do you any good, right? Like, well, I can't get out of bed in the morning. Well, okay. So I'll give you a few of those steps out of the 5-step, what I call the 5-step snooze-proof wake-up strategy. So if you're not a morning person, here's what you got to do. Here's a few steps. Number 1, you've got to visualize. Well, you've got to set your intentions before you go to bed about what you're going to do when you wake up. See, here's one of the most important distinctions that I've figured out. Our first thought in the morning, when our eyes open, the alarm clock goes off, is almost always the same thought that we had before we went to bed. So if you think about, if anyone celebrated Christmas when they were a kid, well, you went to bed thinking about the morning and you were excited, you couldn't wait for it. Then the alarm clock went off, or you woke up, and the first thought you had was, oh my gosh, it's Christmas, right? Now, if you've never celebrated Christmas, think about when you're going on a vacation and you can't wait for the vacation, and you're waking up early and going to the airport or getting in the car. You're thinking about it before bed. You're excited. You wake up. It's the first thing on your mind. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, let's say you're stressed out about something. You've got a major problem, or you've got your relationship has problems, or whatever it is in your life that you're afraid of or is causing you stress. If you go to bed stressed out and worried about it and dreading waking up and having to face the day, and then the alarm clock goes off, what's your first thought? You open your eyes and you go, oh gosh, it's here, the problem's still here, or today's the day I've got to face it, right? Yeah. So our last thought before bed is the same as the first thought in the morning, or vice versa. So what I realized is that I could recreate that feeling of waking up Christmas morning every single day of my life by actively, consciously taking control of my thoughts before bed, programming my mind. So when the alarm clock goes off, before I go to bed, I tell myself, I actually have what's called a bedtime affirmation, right? In the book, you get access to these bedtime affirmations where you can actually read, and they are exactly what to say before bed. Now, if you don't have the bedtime affirmations, that's fine. You basically just decide when the alarm clock goes off, I'm going to get up, I'm going to turn it off, I'm going to get out of bed, I'm going to go downstairs, I'm going to read a book or exercise or do something positive for my life. So that's before bed. You've got to imagine yourself and repetitively visualize yourself doing that. Now, step number 2, and this could actually be step number 1. You could swap these out if you want. Set your alarm clock across the room as far as you can. Now, this might sound elementary, but I cannot tell you how many people I've had tell me that this was the game changer for them. And I've had highly successful people tell me that this was the game changer for them. Here's the deal. When the alarm clock goes off in the morning, if it is on your nightstand right next to your bedside, right? And if it's within arm's reach, well, when the alarm goes off in the morning, you're still like 90% asleep, right? You're barely you're on like that fence of consciousness and unconsciousness. Like, Navid, you ever turned off the alarm in the morning and you don't even remember it going off, right?
Yep.
Because you were still half asleep and you just turned it off and went back to bed, right? So by putting the alarm clock across the room, it forces you to get out of bed to turn it off. And when you get out of bed, what I call your wake-up motivation level, which when the alarm goes off, it's probably like a 1 or a 2, right? Now it's at a 4 or a 5 because you had to walk across the room and turn it off. The third step is you've got to drink a full glass of water. First thing in the morning, I have a full glass of water right next to my alarm. And by the way, my alarm is next to the front door of my bedroom. And before I go to bed, I tell myself and I visualize that when the alarm goes off, I'm going to pick up my phone, which is what I use, and it's by the front door of the bedroom. No matter how tired I am, I'm going to pick up my phone and I'm going to go to the bathroom to brush my teeth. So sometimes I'll be exhausted like a zombie stumbling over to the phone, but before bed, I told myself what was going to happen. I pick up the phone, I walk to the bathroom, I drink a full glass of water. Why is that so important? Because we are dehydrated by default, right? 6-7 hours of sleep, we're dehydrated by default. So it's important that you rehydrate, and that takes that mental fatigue that you have from dehydration, it takes it away very quickly. So I drink a full glass of water, brush my teeth, walk downstairs, fill up the water again, drink a second glass of water, rehydrate myself, then I get into my miracle morning. So those are a few of the most important steps to get yourself out of bed. And I'm telling you, they might sound simple. They're not rocket science, but they're a game changer if you struggle to wake up and overcome the snooze button in the morning.
Yeah, definitely. This very useful. I think, especially this one with putting your alarm for a little far away, that will definitely help. I mean, sometimes I put it next to my bed and I don't even know that I turn it off sometimes, and I think that's a game changer as well. But you always get those people that say, yeah, but I feel good when I sleep longer, I feel good, maybe I wake up at 9 or 10 in the morning, when most people, they are awake for, if they're an entrepreneur, I mean, I think it's very common that you can set your own schedule, so you can stay up all night working, all this stuff. So what do you say to those people that say, I mean, I feel good waking up at 10 or 11 even in the morning?
Sure. So here's what I would say. A couple things. Number one, there's not one right way to do things. So like in the Miracle Morning book, I have a whole chapter on customizing your miracle morning, right? And I talk about how I'm not telling you have to wake up at a certain time. I wake up at 3:30 a.m. 7 days a week. Very few people do that, right?
Yeah.
And most people that do the Miracle Morning, they do it at like 6 a.m. or 5. Some do it 5 a.m. Some do it at 4 a.m. But usually I'd say average is 5 to 6 a.m. However, there are some people that, when you're watching this right now, here's what I would tell you. Whatever time you wake up now, awesome. Take an hour, back it up an hour, and use that hour to make yourself stronger. Eben Pagan, here's a great quote from Eben Pagan. Eben Pagan, if you don't know who Eben Pagan is, he's one of the most successful entrepreneurs, on the planet. I mean, his business does $25 million a year. He works from home. All of his employees work from home. They're all virtual. And he has this extraordinarily successful business. Well, I was listening to an interview recently where Tony Robbins was interviewing Eben Pagan. And at the end of the interview, it was like a 2-hour interview, so much great content. Mm-hmm. And Tony said, Eben, let's wrap this thing up, man. If you could give everyone listening one tip, if you could give them the single most important thing that they could do to take their life, their business to the next level, everything you've given has been great, but if you had to pick one, what would it be? And Eben said, develop a daily morning success ritual. He said, how you spend the first hour of your day is the most important because it sets the mindset and the context for the rest of your day. And he said, use the first hour to make yourself strong, physically stronger than you were yesterday, mentally stronger than you were yesterday, emotionally and intellectually stronger than you were yesterday. And it's funny, but the things he talks about doing are actually, almost all of them are incorporated in the Miracle Morning. He talks about drinking a full glass of water. In fact, I actually learned that from Eben Pagan. So credit goes to Eben for that. But I heard this interview much later, and he did talk about do affirmations every morning, do visualization every morning, do meditation every morning, do these things every morning. So Eben Pagan, obviously, someone who I've learned a lot from, and I encourage you, if you don't know Eben Pagan, go Google or go to his website, Eben, E-B-E-N, Pagan, P-A-G-A-N, ebenpagan.com. Brilliant guy. I also heard a quote the other day from Mark Cuban, and Mark Cuban said, for every hour that you sleep in, someone else is already awake, kicking your ass, or has already been awake for an hour to kick your ass. Right?
Yeah.
So again, I'm not one to say that you have to wake up at a certain time. I'm just telling you that if you wake up in the morning like most entrepreneurs and you go straight to email, you check your email, well, you've missed a golden opportunity to develop yourself to be a better version of who you were yesterday, right? If every day you take your level of personal development to another level, you go from a 5 to a 6 to a 7 to a 7.1 to a 7.3, right? That is the greatest thing that you can do. It's it goes back to that old analogy of sharpening the saw, right? Don't do what most entrepreneurs do, which is wake up and just work every day. Mm-hmm. Wake up an hour earlier than you need to check email and work and develop yourself to be a better version of who you were yesterday. Reading, meditating, doing affirmations, visualization, journaling, right? Planning, all of these things, and exercising especially. Yep. And then you can jump in and check your email, and that's really. So I don't know. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, definitely. I'm very interested in this topic, especially like how you can become a high achiever. I interviewed Robert Greene recently, and also had Todd Herman on the show, kind of talk about the champion's mindset and what it takes to really become a great person, successful in this sense, like athletes and so on. So what have you seen? What's some practice you've seen, like how you can really become a high achiever? Is that, obviously it starts with the morning, but overall, like how can you really take this to the next level and incorporate the habits of so it sticks?
So a couple things I'll share. Yeah, the Miracle Morning is arguably, I would really, like Eben Pagan said, most important thing you can do, create a morning success ritual. And by the way, we'll get back to your question in a second, but I want to say something. When I was doing the research for the Miracle Morning, even before the research, when I was thinking, could I write this as a book? And I was researching, are there any other books on this? Here's what I found, I found that every highly successful, teacher, trainer, guru, like Eben Pagan or Robin Sharma or Tony Robbins, all of them talk about the importance of a morning ritual, right? Tony Robbins calls it the hour of power. Robin Sharma, every year when he does his how to make this your best year ever, one of his modules, he'll do 5 modules or 7 modules, One of them is always about your morning routine. But what I realized is that no one yet had focused on this as the single most important thing. It was always one of many lessons. So if you're watching one of these gurus, you're reading their book, you're watching their video series, and you're learning all these lessons. And one of them is wake up early. And you have the limiting belief that says, I'm not a morning person. Right? What's the one lesson that you're going to skip over and you're going to focus on the other ones? Right? And that's what I realized. And so the Miracle Morning, I realized that became the one thing that literally changes everything. Now, as far as other things that you can do to be a highly successful entrepreneur, I think the first thing that you've got to do is you've got to get yourself around other like-minded entrepreneurs, right? I did a podcast recently, you mentioned I have a podcast. It's called Achieve Your Goals, right? That's the name of my podcast, Achieve Your Goals. Everything is pointed toward that. And our episode a few episodes ago was how to upgrade your circle of influence, right? And upgrading your circle of influence is arguably the most important thing you can do. How do you do that, right? Well, first and foremost, you'll see I've got pictures of these different famous people up here, right? And I always get teased about these. People go, why do you have a picture of Oprah, right? Picture of Oprah in your office. Well, these aren't necessarily, and that's Albert Einstein is behind here. You can't see him, but those aren't necessarily the 5 that, if I had to pick the 5, they were just the first 5 that I found good headshots of that I printed out, right? But here's the point. The highly successful entrepreneurs, you might not be able to call Tony Robbins on the phone or Eben Pagan on the phone or Navid on the phone, right? Maybe you can't call them, but you can buy their book. You can listen to their podcast. And I want you to think about something. If you listen to a podcast, right, and gosh, they're, Entrepreneur on Fire, right? You've interviewed some of these guys, Navid. I mean, Pat Flynn, Smart Passive Income. I mean, there's so many podcasts now. Tim Ferriss launched a podcast. Brendan Burchard just launched a podcast. They're free. They're free, right? There's more content than you could ever consume in a lifetime for free now online. And imagine if you were to have a conversation with one of these entrepreneurs and you ask for their advice. Guess what they're going to give you? They're going to give you the same advice that they're giving for free on their podcast or on their YouTube videos, right? So the point is, if you want to become a highly successful entrepreneur, you've got to just brainwash yourself almost, right? Just expose yourself every day to highly successful entrepreneurs. Great example. That interview that Tony Robbins did with Eben Pagan, it was called The New Money Masters. You can Google it, find it, buy it. I've listened to it probably 30 times. Wow. I listen to it over and over. It's on a CD in my car. I listen to it over and over and over and over and over and over again because I'm all about programming my subconscious mind to think the way that these people think that are at a level that I'm not at yet, right? I'm still trying to get to the highest level, right? There's always going to be another level. And when I get to that level, then I'll use the Miracle Morning to get to the next level. I was interviewed this morning, Navid. This is a side note. I was interviewed this morning, and it was a very interesting question that I've never been asked before. The gentleman, Bob Sink, he had read the Miracle Morning, and he said, Hal, you used the Miracle Morning to get yourself out of a really difficult time in your life. You were at rock bottom. You were broke. You were depressed. You were out of shape, right? He said, you're not in bad shape anymore. You're at a very different place than you were then. Yet you still do the Miracle Morning every day. He said, why is that? And it was really interesting. I never thought of. I mean, I knew that I had an answer to that question, but I never really thought about that because his point was, if someone's listening to this, and this is for anyone listening or watching this, if someone's listening to this, he said right now, and if they're at a rock bottom, yeah, they get it. The Miracle Morning took you out of that. Within 2 months, you changed your life, doubled your income. But what if someone's listening to this and they are an ass kicker? They are thriving. They're a CEO of a $100 million company. Life's great. How does this apply to them? And what I realized is that the Miracle Morning got me out of the lowest point in my life, and it got me to the level I wanted to be at. And once I got to that level, then I got clarity on what the next level was for me. And I used the Miracle Morning to get to that level. And then once I got to that next level, I had clarity on what I wanted to do and be and accomplish beyond where I was then. And then there was a next level. And that's the thing that we all have in common, is whatever level we're at, there's a next level. And when we get to the next level, there becomes the next level. And then you get there and the next level. And I realized that the Miracle Morning is the most effective, results-oriented practice to get you to the next level for the rest of your life. When I'm 99 years old, right, I'll still be doing the Miracle Morning to get to the next level, whatever that is for me at that point.
Yeah, I mean, that's powerful, and especially like this thing that you surround yourself with other like-minded people. It doesn't have to be in person or live coaching or whatever. You can listen to their podcast, or even what I found is reading books is super powerful for me. It's completely transformed my business and life, really reading a lot of personal development, business books, because then you really get into the knowledge and mind of someone's research. Maybe it took them years and years to write this book, you know. I mean, you've written a few books. It's not a straightforward process all the time. It's like a lot of things that goes into this stuff. And so have you also seen that for yourself, reading other books that kind of took your life and business to the next level?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Mike, because I forgot, because that is the other way, right? One of the best ways to get in the mind of a highly successful person. Mm-hmm. And here's one thing that's even better about books. If you grab, and obviously I read, you know, I'm big into reading, right? Mm-hmm. And that's my little bookshelf. I've got a bookshelf over there. Most of my books are over there. I believe that that's one of the most effective ways to take your level of personal development up, right? And develop your mindset. And here's the thing about books that's an advantage is if you and I talked for an hour and I picked your brain, Navid, and you gave me all your best tips, it would only be a fraction of what you could fit in a book. Exactly. So even if you got the most successful person that you wanted to emulate on the phone and you're like, oh my gosh, I have an hour with you, and you pick their brain for an hour, you'd only be able to maybe get a chapter's worth of their book. You follow? So books are one of the greatest ways because you get so much knowledge, right? And a great book, by the way, that I just finished. Where is it? Here you go. Vision to Reality by Honore Corder. Everybody should check this book out. Vision to Reality. It's one of the best books I've ever read on, turning your vision into a reality, right? But breaking down goals into 100-day goals so that each day represents 1% of the whole, right? Each day is 1%. So it's really easy to do the math, right? Every day you're like, am I at 1% of my goal? After 10 days, you need to be 10% of your goal. So it really changed the way that I kind of set goals. You know, like sometimes people do it in quarters, but like a quarter's 89 days or 91 days or just 93 days, depends on the quarter. So that was a really straightforward way, vision to reality. But I agree with you 100%. You should read books every day, at least 10 pages a day to develop your mindset and go to that next level.
Yeah, and especially if you don't have maybe that much time to read, you can even listen to audiobooks, and that's what I do a lot, especially when I'm going for a run or walk, whatever. I listen to them. I try to read some books as well, but you know, if I have all the books in my apartment, it would be limited. But I mean, Kindle readers, there's so much stuff now. You can really incorporate that even in your morning routine. Reading maybe for 30 minutes a day or something, that's powerful, I think, and can really change your life. Maybe you want to become an expert in something, then reading books on this topic is probably the best way you can do. I found this for myself, and reading stuff on my topic and what I want to help my clients with. Really, I can take my business and life to the next level. So.
Yeah, I agree. And reading is one of the elements of the Miracle Morning. You know, that is one of the elements. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to say something before I forget. Going back to us talking about upgrading your circle of influence and putting yourself around like-minded people, I want to invite all of your viewers and listeners to the Miracle Morning community on Facebook. It's growing by about 100 members a week. We're at 4,100 members. And talk about... It is. In fact, you just joined.
I just joined it. Yeah. It's 4,000 plus members. Yeah.
I personally accepted you today. Believe it or not, I go in there every day, and but it is the most. And I don't know if you read the post yet, but I've never seen such an inspired group of just like-minded people supporting each other and holding each other accountable. And people they create these 30-day challenges and they hold each other accountable and become accountability partners. And I mean, it is really, really cool. So anybody watching or listening, go to Facebook, It is a private group, so you can't, I just want people to have privacy, so you can't see the posts until you ask to join, but it's, so of course it's free. Look for the Miracle Morning Community and request to join even before you read the book. A lot of people join right when they hear me talk on an interview or they see me speak, then you order the book and it comes in the mail, but you can already just see the transformations that are happening in people's lives. And you see things like, day 30 of the Miracle Morning, I lost 12 pounds. Yeah. I quit smoking. I read 3 books. I'm in the, I had the best month in my career, and I'm the happiest I've ever been. And that's actually a literal post the other day from a woman named Dawn Pogue. Like I see those all the time where that's people's 30-day results very consistently. So
I will definitely link that up in the show notes. I'll link that up in the show notes so people can check it out over at navid.me/27. So there you can find everything we talk about today as well. So another thing that's important, I think, when it comes to maybe waking up early and having this morning routine is actually knowing why you wake up in the first place. Like, what's your purpose in life? Maybe like for you, when you speak, it's very obvious that you love what you do and like you're sharing your message with the world. But for someone who's maybe starting out or they don't know what they're doing, it can be hard. Like, what's my purpose? Why am I doing what I'm doing, right? So that's I found for myself when I really incorporate this. I know, okay, I have my goals. I know why I'm doing this. It's always like in the back of my head somewhere. So can you address that a little bit?
Yeah, I think there's a couple ways you can go about it. Because sometimes clarity doesn't come from sitting there and thinking about it. Mm-hmm. Clarity comes often from learning or growing or meditating, or you know what I mean? Like for me, I thought for 6 months about how to turn my life around back when I was at my low point, when I was depressed and broke and all of that. I thought for 6 months about it. It took 2 minutes on a run and combined with a quote from an audio from Jim Rohn. So think of it this way. I got more clarity in 2 minutes of personal development, combining the physical element with the intellectual element. I got more clarity in 2 minutes of personal development than in 6 months of trying to get clarity by just thinking. So the point is this. You might know your purpose. You might know what you want. You might know exactly what your goals are, your business, whatever it is. And that's beautiful. However, you might be on the other end where you go, I don't know what I want, and I've tried to figure it out, and I can't figure it out. Well, what I encourage you to do is, like Eben Pagan, that one piece of advice, create your miracle morning. Wake up an hour earlier tomorrow, whether it's as simple as just exercise and read. If you don't need to do the full miracle morning yet. You could just start small. Just exercise for 10 minutes and read for 20 minutes or for 30 or whatever. That could be a start. But by doing that, you're going to get more oxygen to your brain, so you're going to think clearer, and you're going to expose your mind to new ideas through the reading or listening to audios or whatever it is. And often clarity comes when you're engaged in that personal development, not when you're sitting in your, slumped over going, I need more clarity. What can I do? Sometimes it's journaling, and it's as you're writing that thought comes into your head that wouldn't have come into your head if you were just sitting there trying to think of it, right? It's when you're moving forward, you're engaging, you're growing, you're evolving, you're exposing your mind to new ideas. That's when your best ideas and your grandest clarity often comes to you.
You have this. When you started, you have this motivation, right? You want to get started. You want to get up in the morning. Maybe it's very common, especially when we see for maybe New Year's resolutions. Like we want to get to the gym for the first 30 days, and in January it's like packed. I know you addressed this a little bit in your book as well. Yeah. And there's this quote by Jim Rohn as well. Like, motivation is what gets you started, and habits is what keeps you going. It's one of my favorite quotes, and it's very true when it comes to people as well. Like, most people, they quit before actually they get to this habit. So it's just part of their lifestyle, and what they do is like feeling for you this is natural now, waking up 3:30 in the morning. So it's not a big deal, even though for someone else out on the outside it feels like, oh wow, so early, right? So how can you get this habit and sticking to it long term?
So that is, and I'm glad you brought that up, because that's the last chapter of the Miracle Morning book, right? It's called From Unbearable to Unstoppable, right? It's how to change, any area of your life, how to change any habit that you want to in 30 days. And the concept is that when you try to change a new habit, whether it's getting rid of an old habit, a bad habit, or implementing a new good one, it feels unbearable at first, right? It feels unbearable. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired. I don't want to get out of bed, right? And then the end result is once the habit's in place and it's on almost what I would call cruise control, like the habit is set, it's easy now, that's when you become unstoppable, right? So that's the challenge is how do you go from unbearable to unstoppable, right? Where's the in between? So as a coach, I've spent a lot of time researching habit implementation and habit mastery and creation. I've read books and blogs and articles, and I've experimented. And what I believe is the most effective strategy for implementing a new habit is that it's really this idea that there's 3 phases within the 30-day period. Now, some people go, well, wait. I've heard that it takes 21 days to implement a habit, right? We've all heard that. I believe that originated in the book Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, which I've got somewhere on the shelf here.
One of my favorite books, yeah.
Is it really? Yeah. But he was the first person, to my knowledge, to really document how long it takes to implement a habit. But that was just based on one study. That was based on one research, but it just like kind of took hold, and then people started repeating it and quoting it, and it became like the norm. Now, what I found is there is no perfect, there's no exact amount of days. In the book, The One Thing, which I love, I believe they quote a study at Harvard, and I think they talk about it taking 66 days on average.
I just listened to this book. It's interesting.
Oh, yeah. Love that book, The One Thing, by Gary Keller and Jay Papasan. So they quote like 66 days, right? So it just varies. It depends on the person. It depends on the difficulty of the habit. Depends on how long you've been doing it. I mean, there's so many elements. But this has been, I've experimented with a lot. This has been the most effective strategy. And I've seen it work with so many of our Miracle Morning community members, right? They follow it. So the first 10 days, days 1 through 10, is the unbearable phase. Now, because we're never taught this in school, we should be. It's the most important lesson we could learn. Habit mastery, right? How to change your habits and change your life. We're not taught it, though. But days 1 through 10 is the unbearable phase. Now, most people, because they don't know that it's going to be a temporary phase, on day 3, when they go to the gym and it still is unfun and it's unbearable and they hate it and they're sore, and day 4, it's the same, and day 5, it's still unbearable, right? Well, what happens is they, at some point in those first 10 days, they just throw in the towel because they go, oh, if this is how the new habit's going to feel forever, I can't do it. I tried. I gave it a few days. It's too hard, right? Mm-hmm. But if they knew that this is a temporary phase, this is the price that you've got to pay for a lifetime of health, wealth, transformation, whatever you want. Let me ask you a question, Navid. Could you or anyone, could you do anything, no matter how unbearable it is, for 10 days if you knew it was going to be a forever payoff?
I mean, that's obviously the answer is yes, for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. Right? We can do anything for 10 days if we're committed and if we know there's a payoff. So the second 10-day phase, days 11 through 20, are what I call uncomfortable. And this is where it's still not fun, but you don't hate it anymore. You just don't like it. A lot of people, if they do make it this far, they still give up at some point because they're like, I still don't like it, and they throw in the towel. Most people don't make it out of the first 10 days. That's why, as I said in the book, right, if you go to the gym the first week of January, everybody has their New Year's resolutions, which are really just new habits. It's packed. And then the second week, it's half empty, and the third week, it's back to what it was in December because everybody gave up that was new, right? So the next 10-day phase is uncomfortable, and you got to push through it knowing that days 21 through 30 is what I call the unstoppable phase. You go from unbearable to uncomfortable to unstoppable, and here's how you know you've reached that point. It might happen on day 18 for you. It might happen on day 25 for you. It just depends. It's when I was trying to become a runner, for example, I hated running, hated it with a passion, right? Somewhere around the first 10 days were unbearable. My body hurt. I'm out on the pavement going, oh my gosh, I don't want to do it. Somewhere around day 23, I was getting ready in the morning. I woke up and I was like, I'm going to go running today. And I got excited as I was lacing up my running shoes. And it hit me. I was like, whoa. It was like one of those moments where like everything stopped. And I went, I'm actually excited to go running. This is amazing. Like, because here's the thing. Once you hit that point, your life has changed. That's why I call it the unstoppable phase. Because if you enjoy doing something that you hated doing 3 weeks ago, whether it's waking up early or whatever, you're unstoppable because now you can do it forever. Now, one very important distinction that I have to share. Some people will get to that point and they celebrate by taking a week off, right? They go, I did it. I'm a runner. I'm excited. They take a week off. Now, let me ask you a question, Navid. If you're looking back, let's say you take a few days off to celebrate, and you're looking back over the past 21 or 23 days, and the first 10 days were unbearable. The next 10 days were uncomfortable, and you only had 1 or 2 days that you felt unstoppable. Is that mostly negative emotions that are associated with your new habit or positive? Mostly negative, right?
Yeah.
So you're not going to want to get back to it. You're going to be like at a subconscious level, you're like, oh, I don't know if I want to do it anymore, right? So you've got to follow through and reinforce it on day 21, 22, 23. And you're like, I'm a runner. I'm an early riser. I don't drink soda anymore, whatever it is. You got to reinforce it with positivity. And then what I always recommend is when you get to day 30, do it again. Do another 30-day challenge. And in the Miracle Morning community, when you join, you'll see people that say, I'm on day 64 out of 90, right? They're on their third 30-day challenge. Live your life in 30-day challenges. The first one can be the Miracle Morning. Second one could be giving up smoking or soda or whatever. But every 30 days, identify and implement a new habit into your life that will be a game changer for your health, your wealth, your spirituality, your relationships, etc.
Very powerful. I think challenges, especially that, can really take someone's life to the next level. I love challenges. I do it for myself with my fitness, whatever I do. Sometimes I set, as you say, you can set 30-day challenges, but you should actually start over again after the 30 days. You should not stop there because 30 days is not a very long time. So It should be like over 3 months, and then you keep going, with something. You have your Miracle Morning, you keep doing it, and then you implement small things every 30 days. You can change and take your life to the next level. But another thing I want to cover here before we end is the sleeping. Like, how many hours do you need? I know you're not the sleeping expert. First of all, the sleeping is I know it's important, and also the food we eat, on a daily basis for achieving our highest potential in life.
Yeah, and I will mention a quick plug. I'm big on eating for energy. My whole life is I engineer my life for maximum energy because as an entrepreneur, we need physical, mental, and emotional energy at a peak so we can perform at a peak and create at a peak. And so if anybody wants to go check out, I do have an entire podcast episode, the Achieve Your Goals podcast. We're on episode number 20 now. It's on iTunes. I don't know which episode it was. You have to search through them. But there is one where it's on, I think it's called Eating for Energy, something like that. But it's
cool.
all about
I'll link it up, yeah.
Yeah, oh yeah, thank you. And we go in depth. So as far as how many hours of sleep we need, see, this is interesting. I am not a scientist, okay? So I give the disclaimer that says my everything I'll share here is based on my personal research, but you get all different You get people that say you need 8 hours. You get people say you can go off of 4 hours. You get people that say polyphasic sleep's the best, where you sleep 2 or 3 hours and then you sleep every 4 hours for 15 minutes, right? There's all different stuff.
Yeah.
So, but here's my personal belief based on my personal experience and experimentation. I believe that we need, for the most part, as many hours of sleep as we believe that we need. And I don't say that as an end-all be-all that, so Hal, you're saying I could sleep 1 minute a night and be okay? No. But here's what I'm saying. If you tell yourself that, if you believe that you need 8 hours of sleep and you go to bed at midnight and you got to wake up at 6 one night because you got to bed late or you got to wake up early, and you go to bed thinking, I need 8 hours of sleep to feel good and rested, and that's the belief you've created, and you go, I'm only going to get 6 tonight, Navid, how are you probably going to tell yourself that you're going to feel in the morning?
Very good,
Yeah, not very good. You're tired.
Yeah.
And it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I believe a lot in the mind-body connection. The doctors, I go back, this belief for me, the doctor said I would never walk again, and I took my first step within 3 weeks.
And I really believe that because I believed I would, and I told myself I would, and I visualized it, I believe there's a mind-body connection that, and science has proven this, that's more powerful than we could ever imagine, that we can manipulate our cells, good or bad, right? What is the number one cause of heart attack? And it's stress. So think about that. When you're stressed out, what you do to your cells, you literally create disease and death in your body. So the mind-body connection is more powerful than we can imagine. So, and I know Mark Cuban sleeps 5 hours a night. I know that Einstein and Aristotle and some of the most brilliant minds in history were known. Benjamin Franklin, known for sleeping like 4 hours a night. I personally like to get 5.5 to 6. So I just say experiment, but I say, here's what I say. This is the takeaway. If you believe that you need 8 hours because that's what you've told yourself, and therefore you believe it, and therefore it's become a reality, I challenge you to try sleeping for 7 hours and going to bed, giving that your last thought, affirmation, visualization that says, I'm going to sleep 7 hours tonight, and my body is going to respond ideally. I'm going to wake up feeling amazing. Right? And reprogram your body accordingly. And here's what I believe about sleep. Is the last thing I'll share, and we can wrap up. I believe that more important than the amount of hours you get, whether it's 8 or 7 or 6 or 5, is that you go to bed and wake up at the same time every night, so that you create your body, you program it. If you go to bed at all different times and wake up at all different times, your body doesn't know, your biological clock, it doesn't know when to feel awake and when to feel tired, right? But if you always wake up at, like for me, at 3:30 a.m., my body knows at 3:30 a.m., it's time to wake up. It knows that, right? Because I've trained it. Did it happen the first time? No. Right? I went from 6 a.m. to 5 a.m. I did that for, a few weeks. Then from 5 to 4, did that for a few weeks. Then from 5 or 4 to 3:30, or actually 3:45. And then, gradually over time, I moved it back. So you might start by just going 30 minutes back or even 15. Do that for a week. Reprogram yourself gradually. So I'm not encouraging you to do a night and day shift, but I encourage you to back it up, go off 15 minutes less or 30 minutes less and try to go into it with the belief that your mind is more powerful than you realize and that you need as much sleep as you tell yourself and you believe that you need.
Awesome. This is great. And I think maybe you don't even need an alarm anymore, like since you've been doing it for such a long time, or do you still need that every morning to get up?
I use an alarm just out of habit, but I haven't in the past. I went through a phase where I decided to try waking myself up, and my part of my bedtime affirmation was I'm going to wake up at this time no matter what, and it works like clockwork. I don't know why. I got out of the habit on a vacation, and then I came back, and yeah, that's a good point though. Maybe I'll take that as a challenge to get back to not use.
I'll challenge you to do that. I probably still need my alarm to get up, but man, you've been sharing so much great stuff here. People can just take some of the stuff here from this interview, they can really change their lives, their habit, and so on. So where can people find you if they want to check out more of your work online?
Yeah, you can go to my website, halelrod.com. You can go get the book, The Miracle Morning, on Amazon, and go read the reviews. Every day, it's so funny. I'm like an addict. I refresh my browser right now we're at 321 reviews on Amazon. And they're good, 4.8 out of 5 stars. So I'm very grateful for that. But every day I'm like, is there a new review? Is there a new review? And then every day I usually get 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. But you can go to Amazon, read the reviews, get the book, and then the Miracle Morning community. That's the place where I engage with more than anywhere else. That's a great place to go. The Miracle Morning community on Facebook, and be aware there's the Miracle Morning fan page. Don't go there. That's not as, we don't engage as much there. Go to the Miracle Morning community on Facebook, and that's the best place to reach out.
Definitely. I'll link up everything we talked about here over at navid.me/27, so that there you can find it. So any final words here, Hal?
I will, and then before I forget, anyone that's listening to this, that money is tight right now. If you're like, you know what, I would love to get the book, but right now I don't even have $15. Like I'm on a budget right now. You can actually go get started on the Miracle Morning for free. Number 1, join the community. But number 2, you can get the Miracle Morning crash course if you go to miraclemorning.com. Miraclemorning.com you'll get a few free chapters of the book. You'll get a 17-minute video training from me and a 60-minute in-depth audio all emailed to you. instantly. And that's at miraclemorning.com. And the last thing that I'll share is that I really believe that the number one cause of unfulfilled potential in our lives, the number one cause of us settling for less than we really want, is never deciding that now matters more than any other time in our lives. Never deciding that today, what we do today, is the most important decision that we're going to ever make. Because if we live with this mindset that there's always tomorrow, I can start that diet tomorrow, I can start waking up early tomorrow or the next day or next week or next month or next year, what happens is it's a mindset, a procrastinator's mindset, where you think there's always some other time. You have to decide that the only way you're going to create an extraordinary life is to create an extraordinary today. And you got to do that every single day. So that's why my encouragement is wake up in the morning, win the first hour of your day, so that you can put yourself in the best position to win the day. And do that. Don't wait until tomorrow. An extraordinary morning starts the night before with your intentions before you go to bed. Move the alarm clock, fill up a glass of water, set it next to the alarm clock, create those intentions before bed, and wake up tomorrow and do something that makes you a better version